I hope with this podcast we can share to people, really start as soon as possible considering storytelling. For me, I'm an ambitious person and I really wanted to progress in my career. And at the beginning, I succeeded through a lot of value that I brought, and I noticed that it was not enough.
And this is why it's important to bring the storytelling, because if you just bring the facts, you don't have the decision. But if you bring the facts with the what implication for people, they do care about what you say, and you present the fact that it's not the end, but it's a beginning of a next action. And I learned how to structure my thoughts to make sure that people get something out of my communication. And one of the big tips they give, and this is still my mantra today, and it's a tip I give to everyone that wants to start in storytelling, it's to use the 3 what. Well, Nicolas, this is our first podcast together. It's incredible to be with you here, because I remember when we first started to speak, I mean, you weren't the first one I contacted on the LinkedIn world. And that was weird because we have so much in common. And one of these things is how important we think that storytelling is in our career as a finance professional. We've had so much in common in that area, and I wanted to know a bit more what you found important in storytelling, why you find that storytelling is so important in your career, in anyone's career actually.
Yeah, so in my career, I didn't start with using storytelling at the beginning,
No.
and that's a bit the mistake, and I hope with this podcast we can share to people, really start as soon as possible considering storytelling. For me, I'm an ambitious person and I really wanted to progress in my career. And at the beginning, I succeeded through a lot of value that I brought, and I noticed that it was not enough. There were people that had less good ideas, that were working less well than me, and were more successful than me. So I was studying like what was their technique. And the technique is that they could say things better than me in a shorter way and with more impact. And that's storytelling. They could move other people with their stories, and I could not. So I studied these people, and then I started considering, if I want to make an impact in business and also outside, I need to be better at storytelling. And now, for me, it's my biggest learning the last 5 years is you need to focus on your storytelling if you want to move things in the world.
Well, I have the feeling that you explained my story here, because I had the same as you. You know, when I started, I was technically really good. I was sort of geek, a nerd, an Excel nerd, super happy with knowing how to use Visual Basic, how to use Power Query, Power Pivot. And it's not that I really looked at people and how they succeeded. It's more that I saw how I didn't succeed in getting further in my career. I had this feeling that I always wanted to be promoted, become a manager. And you know, when you start in a Big Four at Deloitte or at PwC, it's almost automatic. You know, you do your work. At the end of the year, you're assessed, you have your evaluation, and they promote you. You become senior, or you become manager, you become senior manager. And at that moment, nobody told me that I needed to communicate better. So when I started to work as a finance business partner, well, I had the chance to find someone who told me, and I'm not joking, he told me that I sucked at communicating.
That's really hard.
That was hard. He told me that, and he was patient enough to explain me that I needed to bring a story. I needed to bring the business facts behind. And at that moment, I just thought, storytelling is just BS. We'll be polite for the rest of the podcast, but it's a buzzword, and I thought that it was a marketing thing that people use to lie to other people.
And that's funny that you say that, because at the beginning also I thought, people that have just words and nothing behind, they are, like you said, it's nothing. And I was really actually jealous that they were more successful than me. Mm-hmm. And that's why, I think when you're jealous about somebody, try to turn that in learning like why are you jealous, and then learn these skills, and then actually once you have these skills, you're not jealous about the people anymore.
It's called a healthy envy.
I didn't know.
That you envy people, but in a healthy way, that they push you to go further.
Yeah.
No, that's great that you mentioned that. And I wanted to rebound on something you said, because you spoke about how people who had words but nothing behind could succeed, but be careful, because it's something that can work on the short term, but you still have to be technically good when you work with storytelling, when you work on your communication and on what you represent. It's important to still have a background and have a qualitative work that's behind, because with that, it's an everlasting success that you will have. It will remain, and it's not something that you will be covered, and at certain time people will notice that you are not so good. So first, work on your technical skills. If I have to give an advice to people, it's work on your technical skills, have a good basis, people will find you credible, and then work on your communication, because at that time you will be strong enough behind to be confident on the outside.
Yeah, agree. For me, is I showed that last week when I was doing a training, is the value you put is your ideas and your work and the communication, but instead of being an addition, so adding the two is a multiplication for me.
Interesting. How do you see that?
And so let's imagine that you work really hard on something and your communication is 0. Well, the value and the impact you have is 0, because something times 0 is 0. And that's also a good way to show to people how important is communication, because it multiplies your work, and it's not just adding something to your work, it's just multiplying the impact of your work.
Nice. But one thing that I wanted to know, because I know how I did, but I wanted to know how you discovered about storytelling and how you trained that, and how you still train it today to make sure that you are good at communication.
Well, a little story. When I was working in my previous experience for Thales, one of my manager was really good at the presentation and explaining the status of our projects. And I was preparing always the slides and spending so much time on the slides to explain after the status of the project. And he was not spending as much time as me on the slides. And still, when you could compare us, like during the presentation and the status on the project, his explanation were much clearer. People had a clear view on what was happening on the project, and we could move on. When I was doing it, like I couldn't convince people. I was also confusing people, and so I was really, again, like a bit jealous and a bit curious. Like, okay, how come that he's more successful at explaining things in presentation than me? And I studied that he had a really clear way of presenting complex topics in a simple way for people that don't understand. Because if you have to explain SAP to non-technical people, it's really hard. And he was really good at that.
In general, you have more often people who are not in the same area as you than people with the same expertise. So of course that helps.
And then, because I saw that if I could take that, I would have more impact, then I started considering that really as something I should work for myself. And basically, yeah, the last 5 years I've trained myself on storytelling. I took a one-day coaching with a public speaking coach.
Okay.
Because I thought I was not good at it. And during the first hour, she assessed me, and she said actually I was already quite good compared to the average. So it gave me confidence that I have already a good basic, but there was a lot of things I didn't know about how you stand, about your voice, about your hands, about your presence, about when you explain something, it has to be a story, like you are between friends and not just like a theoretical presentations. So this one day for me was like an eye-opener on all of the things I need to continue to work on, but also getting assessed. Like that somebody tells you, yes, you are good on these 3 topics and on these 3 others you need to work, is a very good start. So I would recommend to everybody, find a way to get an external opinion on your public speaking skills and storytelling skills, and then get an expert to tell you what is after your plan to work on.
You think you would do that even for a finance professional who has to present every month a status of the monthly results, for example?
Yeah, because financial storytelling is not only about giving a presentation in front of 10 people or 20 people. It's about also when you send an email and there is a problem, how are you going to present that? If you have a call with your CFO because you have a big variance on your sales, how are you going to address that? If on your career, you feel that you work really well this year and you deserve a promotion, how are you going to sell yourself that you are eligible for this promotion? So every time in your life, you need storytelling, and in finance, because we work with such abstract concepts and figures, we need it even more, because without it, then figures don't make sense. So that was for me, but I know that for you, like you said, it's something you discovered with your manager, but how did you go from sucking at it
That's right.
to now being somebody who teaches to people?
Yeah. Well, that's a crazy story. No, not so crazy, but when I discovered that I needed to work on it, well, I started to be interested in communication and in soft skills in general. And it's a bit randomly that I discovered in my company that there was a program called the Pro Track that helped experts communicate better to non-experts. So that was a disease that people have in general that I call the expert syndrome. The fact that you have so much expertise, the fact that you know so much about your topic, while you expect people to know the same. And they noticed that in my company, and they created a program to help throughout a year people like me communicate better. And the goal of it was not only working on yourself, working with others, networking with others, but it was also to discover how to give a TED Talk. So we had a training that helped us create a sort of TED Talk that I had to present at the end of the year in front of an audience of 100 people in my company. It was even an auditorium. I had these Britney Spears microphones, and I learned how to structure my thoughts to make sure that people get something out of my communication. And one of the big tips they give, and this is still my mantra today, and it's a tip I give to everyone that wants to start in storytelling, it's to use the 3 what.
What is it?
The what, so what, and now what. It's a structure that you use in your communication. It's a structure that you use in a TED Talk. It's a structure that you have to use even if you send a mail. Don't communicate only the what. The what is only informative. It's only the information. But if you complete it with the so what and the now what, you will get much further in your communication, because it will matter to people. Because the so what will give the impact. Why does it matter to the people? So people get concerned about what you say. If they don't feel concerned, well, you might as well just send a mail, and they will probably read it and forget it 5 minutes after, and they will not do anything with it. Hence the importance of the now what. The now what is the action you want people to take after your communication. You bring options to people, you bring recommendations. We call that the call to action today, meaning that you want people to do something. I don't say that for a finance professional you have to find all the solutions. It's not something you can do, otherwise you're the CEO of the company. But with your work, you can present options, you can present recommendations with figures, You have to assess them, you have to evaluate them so that people have everything, like in the Chinese menu, they can choose whatever they want to make sure that they compensate, for example, the losses versus the budget, or that they do something better than they do today with enough information so that their decision is informed and based on facts. And this is why it's important to bring the storytelling, because if you just bring the facts, you don't have the decision. But if you bring the facts with the what, the implication for people, so they do care about what you say, and you present the fact that it's not the end, but it's a beginning of a next action, well, in 95% of the cases, people will do something about what you say. And that's the goal, the ultimate goal of storytelling. It's not to create a hero story about yourself or making people believe that your BNL is the hero. It's not Hollywood. The goal is to concretely bring something to the table, and that people go out of the meeting not only with an idea, but also with homework, that they will do something about it.
Yeah, my dad always said, don't come with problems, come with solutions. And this something I've also trained a lot my teams is really, yes, there is something, but what do you think you first? What can we do about it? And for everybody who is listening to this podcast or watching, is really something that if you have this mindset of coming up with propositions, you will bring more value. Your management will love to work with you because you will have done like 80% of the work. And the meeting, instead of being a presentation, for me, I like to make them a decision meeting, a working meeting, where you have a discussion with the people in front of you and you spend more time on looking at what is the best proposition than just explaining the problem. And that's really turning your meetings in this way, change a lot of output you can have from your work.
But that's one super important point that you bring today there, because when we speak of presentations, people think that it's a one-to-many work that you have to present, and then afterwards you say, is there any question? But you have to be open to questions during the whole meeting, because it's a discussion, and you have to wear two hats together. You have the hat of the presenter, the one delivering the insights, and you also have the hat of the facilitator. You're the leader of the discussion. And so that means that you have to be humble enough to take a step back and observe what's happening in the room and bring additional information so people can better assess their discussion. But you also have to weigh in if you have additional information that would contradict what someone said, or just emphasize the importance of what someone says. Well, you have to do it. You take a position and you take a participant role in that meeting, and that's really important, I think.
And earlier you explained that your company did the program. What about people that don't have a company that spend money for themselves? Or what about so first this, and what about also companies that don't know where to start if they want to train their team? What exists in the moment?
That's true that it's not as easy as we think, because today we hear so many offers on storytelling, but they rarely attack the concrete problems of finance professionals. Because of course, storytelling, you will have generic rules where people will tell you that you have to use analogies, you have to use this and this and that. But one of the issues where people struggle first is in the analysis itself. They do not know how to extract what's important in the analysis. So that's already something that you don't have in other parts of the storytelling and that you have in finance. And this is where I would start for the people. Well, while using the 3 what that I mentioned earlier, well, if you use the what, so what, and now what, you will already make a great progress in your storytelling, because even if the delivery is not yet worked on, even if the structure of your story is not worked on, your content will be at least a fuel for your future storytelling skills. And that's where I would start. But the thing is that most people don't know about it. So where CFOs have to start is by becoming a role model for their staff. So many times I had the feeling that CFOs are good in general in storytelling, because they have to present to a board, they have to present to the exco, they often have also to present to investors if they are in a public company. And so they work on presentations quite well in general. The thing is that it's often limited to those areas. And so if you have a sales team or a marketing team, they do not have access to finance presentations in the same way. And they often have a report, a mail, or an old style presentation. And I think that CFOs have an important role in cascading that mindset to their teams. And it starts by being a role model, and it continues by training them. It's an investment, but it will also bring so much value, because finance will not be seen as a back office department anymore. If you participate in decisions, if you are in the room, if you have a seat at the table, well, you add a value to how finance is, and you start becoming a profit center. I know when I say that, it sounds a bit like a nice thing to say, but you definitely have an added value as a finance professional if you are at the table and that you participate to decisions. If you're just bring your reports, well, you are a commodity.
And a lot of CFOs that have the skills, there are stats that a lot of CFOs become CEOs because they have done so much work on what are the solutions to solve the problems, and how can I impact my stakeholders, that they are actually the best candidate to take over CEO's positions when the CEO is leaving. And that's make me think about, like, I have one CFO in mind, the CFO of Olsim that we train together in Algeria. You could see that he's a role model for his team, and I'm sure he will also become one day a CEO because he has the mindset, and it was incredible to see the team, like the motivation and how they are hard worker, but also like all of them in the training. Like I never felt like so much energy in the willing to learn and to also to assess and give feedback to the others. Like that was incredible. Like they were so honest against each other, but also really critical. Like they say, oh yeah, here you remember when we did the training about the presentation that everybody had to present, and they were tough with each other, but that's how you learn. You need to be honest and to give critique to the others.
Yeah, that was tough love indeed, and coming back to the CFO, yeah, it's the typical role model I spoke about, because he thought that his team needed to be a co-pilot. And so he wanted to cascade that mindset. He worked on it first for him, and then he cascaded that mindset. And you saw how important finance was for the CEO when he came to the presentations at the end of the day. Well, the CEO self thought of his finance team as a partner. And you saw that even 6 months after, it was the goal was even more reached in the end. And that was awesome. I gave my big tip on storytelling, the 3 what, but what tip would you give to someone who would start in storytelling?
I would say have always in mind that the person in front of you might not know everything you know, and that you want a specific action and result from them. So look at when either you write an email or when you do a presentations or when you are going to call somebody, like the 3 whats is actually that is, okay, what do you need to explain? So how much is the context? Also why, so what? So what is the implication for them? And after, like, what do you want them to do? Like, now what? So it's really that, like, have the other person in mind, in not just think about yourself.
Okay, well, I think it's a perfect way to close this meeting. I think with the 3 what, it was the beginning and it's the end, and this is definitely how I think that we should envisage the storytelling in finance.
So know what, for everybody who is watching and listening, now is your turn to learn it. If you want to get trained, everybody, we have the best here. So like just contact Soufiane because I've had the chance to work with you and to train people in storytelling. And for me, your program is definitely the most well thought because I know how much time you worked on it. And I know that it has results because I've seen that in front of me. I've seen people become not confident about presenting to now presenting almost every week and also succeeding in their career thanks to that.
Thank you. It's nice to see.